In the previous movie, we assigned materials to the geometry in our family. As we saw, the family editor usually contains very few materials from which to choose. In this movie, we will look at ways to address this situation. We have basically two options. We can create the materials directly in the family editor from scratch, or we can copy and paste them from other projects. Now, I've reset back to the default version of our table family here to illustrate the process. If we look at the Manage tab and click on the Materials button, you'll see that the default template starts with very few materials. There are just a few that are named default and so on. So there's very little in here. If you wanted to create your own material, you really can't click New. There's no New button. What you have to do is select an existing material, so one of these really simple ones that are either just a plain color or something or other, and down here at the very bottom there's a Duplicate button. You'd click Duplicate, and then you'd work your way through the tabs over here to modify the material to suit your needs. It's not necessarily difficult to do that, but you run the risk of creating redundant materials because there's a pretty good chance that the material you want already exists back in the project environment. So I'm going to restore my sandbox, which is minimized down here at the bottom of the screen, go to the Manage tab, and take a look at the materials in here. And you can see that we have quite an extensive list of materials. Again, there's a pretty good chance that the material I'm looking for is already here on this list. The challenge is, how do I get a material that's already predefined from this list and bring it over to my family environment? Unfortunately, there's no import-export button in this dialog anywhere. That would be the ideal scenario. Revit does offer a command here called Transfer Project Standards, which you can also find on the Manage tab. The trouble with Transfer Project Standards is you can choose which category of item you want to transfer. Here's materials. It doesn't offer me the list of materials and allow me to pick and choose. So it's either all the materials or none of the materials. So I go from having a very lean family with just the 3 or 4 materials that it starts with to a family that suddenly has 200 materials when I only needed 2 or 3. Transfer Project Standards is not a great option either. So let's talk about the solution, right? We either have to create the materials from scratch, that's no good. Transfer them all over, that's no good. What are we going to do instead? Copy and paste is usually the best scenario because you can select just what you want from the one file, copy it, and paste it over to the other file. Trouble is, there's no copy and paste here. You're not going to get a copy and paste in the materials dialog. So what you have to do is sort of fake Revit out a little bit. So we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to click on the drop down of the Component button, and you're going to find a Model in Place option here. And this is going to run the In Place Family Editor. So it's actually possible to create what we call an In Place family and build it directly in our project. Now, the category you choose here is not important for this example, so I'm just going to choose Generic Models. The name is not important. I'm just going to accept the default name, Generic Model 1. The drawing will gray out, and it puts me in the family editor, and you can see kind of similar family editor tools that we've been working with all along. I'm going to create a simple extrusion. I'm going to just make a box, and I'm going to make it a rather small size, a foot and a half, something like that, and I'm going to finish the box. Now, if I zoom in, I've just got this simple little piece of geometry. Come over here to the Properties palette, and just like we learned in the previous movie, I can click over here in the By Category list, open up, choose a material that I want, like perhaps here under Metals, I can choose Metal Chrome. Select OK, and now I've assigned a chrome material to this box. Now this box is really just a carrier. Think of it like an envelope. It's the UPS guy. I'm going to select this thing, do Control-C, that puts it on my clipboard. Then I'm going to switch back over to my family here and just anywhere do Control-V, and I'm pasting that box into this other family. I'll finish the paste, and now if I go to Manage and I look at my material list, you're going to see that Metal Chrome has been brought over to this family. So it's a little strange as a process, but it works. It's effective. It's much better than doing Transfer Project Standards and bringing in hundreds of materials you don't need. And it also is much nicer than having to create the material completely over again from scratch. A little bit of a workaround, yes, but it's effective. The trick is, though, really important, I have to be in the family editor when I do it. So that was why over here in the sandbox, we made sure we went into in-place family first. You can't just simply grab a wall or some other object and copy and paste that between the family. If you try and do that, Revit will complain. If I try and grab an object here, do Control-C, and switch over to my family, Revit will complain that you can't copy between a family and project. So make sure you're copying from family to family, and it will work out just fine.